Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith, and how are you all today? Well, I think just about every preparedness channel is talking about that incident down in North Carolina where they took out a power substation or a couple of transformers or whatever. Rightfully so, because we talk about that. We plan for it. This is going to be a major disruption in many people's lives. They're going to be without power for a couple of days. Now, that's hardly the same as being without power for a long time, but they're going to be without power for a couple of days. It's going to be uncomfortable. It does show the vulnerability of elements of our grid and everything like that. So, I understand why everybody's talking about it. But I want to ask something a little bit different, and I want to use this as an example, kind of a tool here, because every time something like this happens, it ought to be used as a learning tool, kind of an experience to say, how would this affect me? What am I ready for? Everything like that. By the way, welcome to all the new people. Both here on YouTube and on Patreon. I just put one up over on Patreon about law enforcement culture. And, I think some people will find it interesting. I had put one up a couple of days ago about why I didn't go in the military, and I got some very illustrative comments from some of the guys who had been, kind of explaining to me what the situation might have been that I was talking about that kind of turned me off. If you haven't been in something, you don't understand the inner workings of it. And so I've had people kind of ask me about, well, how does law enforcement, differ and what's it like in law enforcement, stuff like that. I can't speak to what it's like today, with firsthand knowledge. I mean, I've been told. I know guys that are still in the peripheries of it, but I talked about what it was like during my day, the heyday, one of the golden ages of law enforcement back in the early 70s and 80s, and back then in Miami Vice. Was that in the 80s? I don't know. I didn't ever watch TV. I spent my several decades in bars back then. I didn't watch TV, but I know that was around. So anyway, I just put that up over on Patreon for those of you who are interested about how kind of the culture, what was it like going into law enforcement back during those days. But that's not what we're going to talk about here. What I want to talk about here is what we should be gleaning from the situation down in North Carolina with them taking out that power substation. Excuse me. People down there are going to be going through it in much different ways. On the spectrum of not going to hamper them at all, not going to bother them a bit, to a major catastrophe. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? There are people everywhere on that spectrum. And the question that you should ask is, where are you on that spectrum? And it comes down to a basic question. Are you preparing to live, to actually live, or are you just preparing to survive? Now, I have always been a proponent, as those of you who have read my books know, and I'll hold them up here right now. In my books, in the Stonemont series, I write, this is a complete series about everything that you could possibly need to know about preparing for, surviving, and then rebuilding after a major collapse. It's called the Stonemont series. It's the reversion, the revival, the renewal, and appeal to heaven and the blessings of freedom. Yes, I'm working on the sixth one. I just decided on a name for it. Can't tell you what it is yet. But in these books, I describe how to, and the importance of preparing so that you can live a good life. A good life. One of the premises of integrative preparedness is to be able to live a quality life, not just a dirt scratch in existence. A quality life completely divorced from external systems, interconnected systems, power, banking, whatever it is, governmental, fire, police, all that kind of stuff, completely divorced from them over those systems that you don't have any control over. Okay, everything can go down, and then where are you? I've always preached the importance of being as self-sufficient as possible, as self-reliant, second only to God. Okay, and there will be some who say, well, nobody can be self-reliant, to which I would say people used to be self-reliant, and we have lost that as a result of our increasing reliance on external systems, right? Okay. Until we've gotten to the point to where we think that we need them. Okay. Well, you can say, in medical care, if I need a brain surgery, I can't do that myself. I understand. But people lived for many, many centuries without brain surgery. And, I realized that some needed it and they couldn't get it. And so it was disastrous for them. But for the most part, that's not the norm. And so what we're talking about, or what we need to talk about, is the norm. What's the norm? Can you live a normal life divorced from all those external systems? I bet you that some people down in North Carolina are, right now, living fairly normal lives. Some of them, when the power went out, their gas-powered whole house generator kicked on. Okay, they're just going right along. If their TV hadn't gone out, they wouldn't have known there was a power outage. And depending on what kind of life they live, whether they are sufficient unto themselves for all of those things that make a life a quality life, they're just going to keep on humming. And there will be those that everything in the world has come to a stop. Okay, they can't get to work. Their work is shut down. They've got no heat in their house. They've got no refrigeration. They've got the water's out. Everything. I'm sure that for a couple of days, those people are going to feel as if it's just hell on earth. It's not really, but it's only because they aren't prepared for it. It all comes down to that. What are you prepared for? How much are you prepared for? And things like this really point out the necessity of projecting, trying to project the ultimate level of preparedness you think you can achieve. And that's different for everybody. I know that occasionally we'll have to, and people are limited. You're limited by, first off, finances. Okay, you are limited by finances. I know that to be true. Occasionally I'll get people and say, well, you say to do this, but not everybody has enough money to do that. I understand. But here, I want you to think about something. Some do. Not some. Many do. Many don't. Why don't the ones who don't? Why don't they? There's a difference. See, that's an element of preparedness in itself. Now, we have a lot of people on here who are just ready. If that happened to them, they'd be just fine. I was talking to Mark yesterday about it. He says, man, if that happened, he's talking about a CME. We were talking about the kind of idiots that we have to deal with in this world nowadays. Now, I don't have to deal with them because I can avoid them since I don't work for anybody. But, the kind of idiots that you have to deal with sometimes out there in the world, right? He says, man, if everything went to, everything shut off, a CME happened, I would just smile. My life would be so much simpler. Well, that's true. So others will say, Well, how can you possibly say that? Well, it has to do with how prepared he is and what kind of a lifestyle he's ready to live, right? Compared to how prepared somebody else is and what kind of lifestyle they want to live and it's fulfilling for them. All these questions have to be answered individually. But the thing that so many people have to answer for themselves, if they are on the lower part of the spectrum, is there are people who are far more prepared than you. Why is that? Why is that? Do they care more about being prepared? Well, that's a possibility, and you have to accept that, because I've had people say, I really care, I want to be prepared, but I just can't, blah, blah, blah. Okay, as soon as you say you can't, you do what you meant you won't. Okay, so they say they really want to be prepared, and yet they're not taking that stance into the economic aspects of their preparedness, of their life. Okay? And that's really one of the powerful drivers of how prepared you can be. If you need to stock food, what does it take? It takes money. If you need to stock, guns and ammo, what does it take? It takes money. If you need to buy some land, what does it take? It takes money. Whatever it takes, except your relationship with God Himself, it takes money. Or the ability to barter or trade or things like that. And that's essentially, the same thing. You're getting a result of your labors, a trade-off of your labors. The thing that something like North Carolina gives us is a chance to reflect on our individual level of preparedness. And it reminds us of the possibility of these things happen. Now this was obviously this wasn't an accident. They'll find out who did it. They might find out why. They will find out why. We may never know. We may never find out if they found out. Okay, there's all sorts of reasons. This goes into the deep, dark recesses of law enforcement. There's all sorts of reasons that they wouldn't let people know who did it, or wouldn't let them know that they even know who did it. Okay, that's not important. That's not important. What's important is that individually we take a look at it and remind ourselves, or allow it to remind us and say, this can happen. In this case, they say they're going to get power back in 2 days. What if it had happened on a much larger scale? What if it's 2 weeks? What if it's 2 months? You imagine 2 months without power in, I was going to say a large metropolitan area, but even in smaller areas, people, for the most part, aren't ready for it. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you ready for it? So, my advice on this, and I always use these things as, I check it off. It's just a checklist for me. Okay, if it happened here, are we good? Thankfully, I'm able to say, yeah, I'm good. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that to say that, okay, I just got everything in the world. I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, and when I say those things, I say it wanting to let other people know, I did it, you can do it. I did it, you can. It takes time. It takes thinking, it takes planning, it takes some money. All of those things are up to you to decide whether you're willing to put into it. But I have an old saying that I've always said since I was training people 40 years ago, and that is, you are guaranteed the effects of the causes you choose. It's called cause and effect. You are guaranteed the effects of the causes you choose. If you choose inaction, okay, well that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a very low, if any, level of preparedness. If you If you choose action and if you apply yourself to it and you think about it and you're willing to invest your time, your effort, and your money and your thoughts into preparing, guarding against those things that can and probably will happen in the future, you're going to come out in really good shape. But wherever you are, use this to determine where you think you are on the spectrum. Totally ready? Not ready at all. Because you're somewhere in there. And no matter where you are in there, even if you are at the total ready, and there are some people out there who are, they'll tell you there's always something that they could add. There's always something. Most people are down here towards the middle or maybe a little bit less than the middle. If you're down there below a middle, don't feel badly. You're in great company. You're in a lot of company. I'll just say that. Okay, you're in a lot of company. You just keep at it. But use these incidents to help focus you on what you could be doing, what you should be doing better, and improve your situation. Remember, you want the whole battle plan? Here it is. That's why I make these videos, to try to pass along some of the lessons that are contained in here. The only reason that I make the videos is to talk about the books, actually, because I've already talked about everything in here that I'll never have time to talk about on the videos. So if you get something out of these videos, that's great. If you really want more, you really need to get into these. By the way, if you want them for Christmas, it's too late to get them from me. You can still get them from Amazon, although they won't be autographed by me if that's important to you. The way to get them is down below. You can get them from Amazon in paperback or Kindle, or autographed from me. That'll take you longer. Like I say, probably won't be able to get them to you by Christmas. But think about these things. Think about, what if this happened in your area right now? And I haven't watched what's going on in North Carolina, but I mean, I know. I can imagine. I've seen this stuff before. If you haven't, I would suggest that would be a great training tool for you. Find out. Keep in touch. I'm sure there's plenty of these prepper channels that are going to be talking about it, and it's probably good that you watch them. They'll be telling you about what's going on. What are the people going through? What are they short on? And let that be a driving force for the next step of your preparedness. Okay, all right. Well, as we always say, we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And the ones who prepared well down there in South Carolina, I'm sure they're doing fine. I hope you all are too, but see what better you can get done tomorrow, and keep making that an ongoing effort, so that someday you'll get to where you want to be, and then you won't have to worry about if something like this happens to you. You all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.